Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Storm, and welcome to Web Development 1. So, last week we learned about the internet, um, and you read a bunch of stuff about how the internet works and everything else, but I want to participate with the internet, right? I don't just want to be a consumer of information, consumer of media. That stuff's fun. I like consuming, but I actually want to create. I want to be a creator. Um, and so I'm going to teach you in this class how to create new content for the internet, right? How to create web pages. Like, look at this. This is a web page. There's buttons and there's text and there's images and all kinds of stuff, right? So I'm actually going to teach you how to create these things. Now notice I'm using a web browser, right? This is a web browser, this application. And this web browser allows me to open up HTML files, which we're going to get into in just a minute. Don't be worried. If you're thinking, "Oh, he's getting too complicated already and I'm lost." Uh, don't worry, I will explain everything as I go through it. All right, so this is a web browser, and what web browsers do is they take files, specific files, and they open them. Just like if you were to open up a Word document in Microsoft Word, it knows how to open that file and display it properly, right? Just like web browsers know how to open up HTML files and display them properly. And so essentially what this class is focused on is creating HTML files that your browser can open up and display in the right way, right? So let's take a look at this web page here. By the way, this is w3schools.com. This is the best resource for learning web development online, right? Um, I consider this website to be im- equally as important for your learning as my videos and lectures are going to be, right? Which is why in every week I'm giving you links to w3schools.com and relevant pages on this website so that you can learn specific elements um, uh, as we go through them. Now, W3 Schools is the best because W3 stands for World Wide Web Consortium, and this is a group that actually sets the standards for how the internet works, right? So they're the ones who write the rules on HTML and CSS and all the stuff that we're going to go over. So it's important that we understand what they want us to understand because they're the ones who write the book on this. All right, so this is w3schools.com. Now let's actually look at some HTML code. And we can do this on any website, by the way. If you're using Google Chrome, all you have to do is right-click anywhere in the website. And if you go down to Inspect, it'll actually pull up the code for the web page. It's taking a second, but there we go. So this is the HTML code for this web page, right? And I can go through here and look at everything. Here's a paragraph element. Here's an H2. These are divs, and there's the body. There's the head. You know, all this stuff. There's an iframe. There's a table down here. Now, you may not be able to read any of this. This may not make any sense to you, but by the end of this class, you'll understand what all of these terms mean, and how we can use them to build web pages. And by the end of this class, I mean by the end of this course, not today. We're not going to go over all of this today. Don't get worried. Um, but this right here, this is HTML, right? And we're going to actually write this stuff to build web pages. So I'm going to close this out here because I don't want to look at the code anymore. Now let's go through let's talk about HTML and talk about what it actually is and what it means. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, right here, Hypertext Markup Language. And what that means is that basically this is a language, it's a markup language, it's not a programming language, and there are very stark distinguishing features between those two. A programming language allows you to change the behavior of a web page, and HTML is a markup language. Markup languages just show what the web page is supposed to look like, right? It's just the structure of the web page. And this is a markup language that's focused on hypertext. Now, hypertext is essentially links, right? So this is all hypertext up here because these are links to other web pages. This is hypertext, it's a button. Very rarely these days do you actually see a traditional link, but that's a that's hypertext. And without links, without the ability to move from one page to another, there would be no internet, right? The internet thrives on links. I need to be able to click stuff to go to new pages, right? So hypertext markup language. Let's talk about the structure of a web page, right? So let's go down here to HTML structure. So this is what a basic HTML web page looks like. This is what it's going to look like when we start building one in just a second. Notice that the HTML tag up here at the top, and we'll talk about what tags are in a minute. This tag right here, this section wraps around everything else on the web page, right? Inside of that, we have two other items. We have a head section and a body section. And I know that this section is the body section because it's indicated by the word body. And there's an open tag here and a close tag here at the bottom, which means everything in between those two is inside the body section of my web page, right? So these items are all in the body. Everything in the gray is all stuff that will not be displayed on my screen, right? Everything in the white here is stuff that will be displayed on my screen. So header or headings and paragraphs and images and links and videos and all that stuff. This is where I want all the stuff that it's going to be displayed on my screen. I want it inside the body section. Alrighty. Well, let's actually do this, right? Enough talk, let's actually build a website. So I'm going to minimize that. What we need to do to build a website is it's actually a lot easier than you may think. A website is really just a file. That's it. It's a file sitting somewhere on a server out there in the World Wide Web or out there on the internet. And if you know how to find that file, you can grab that file, copy it onto your computer, and then use a browser to display it. And that's really what happens whenever we search for a new website, right? When I go to my browser and I type w3schools.com up here in the address bar, what I'm typing is I'm typing the URL, the Universal Resource Locator for the web page I'm looking for. And what happens is my browser sends a request to my internet service provider that says, hey, I have this domain name or I have this URL that is, I'm looking for w3schools.com. That's what I'm looking for. And it finds out where the server is that holds the files for w3schools.com. It finds the file it's looking for, copies it, brings it all the way back through the internet onto my computer, and then it opens it up in my web browser. So it's kind of a long process, but it happens almost instantaneously because computers are super fast and our networks are really fast. So that's what's happening, right? Now the files that we need to create an HTML page are actually pretty easy. First of all, I'm going to actually create a new folder so that I can organize all of my stuff better. And I'm going to call this folder, website. And in this folder, I'm going to put a couple of new things. First thing I'm going to put is a new text document, right? Now, here's the cool thing. HTML documents are just text documents. That's it, right? When I'm writing HTML code, I'm just writing text. And I can write all of my HTML code in, say, Notepad or whatever text editor that I want to use, but I'm going to show you a better way to do it here. Now, instead of just renaming the file, I actually want to rename the file name and the extension because I want to change this from a TXT file to an HTML file. So I'm going to type index.html and hit enter. It's going to yell at me and say, hey, you probably shouldn't change the file extension because you may screw something up. But I know what I'm doing, so I'm going to click yes. Now notice what happened there, right? My icon changed to a Google Chrome icon, meaning that, hey, my computer already recognizes that this is a website, right? So why did I use the word index? Why did I name my file index.html? Well, traditionally, the home page of your website is always in a file called index.html. You could have other web pages, um, such as, about me.html, and contacts and all that other stuff. You can have all your other web pages named whatever you want, but the home page of your website is usually index.html. I'm going to delete that. Okay, now I have my web page. It's already built, it's ready to go. I can actually open this up and see it in my web browser. So let's do that. Okay. So now this is my web page. It's pretty exciting, right? Well, there's actually nothing on my web page right now, and that's okay. Um, I haven't told it to do anything. I haven't put anything in my web page yet. But notice it does open up in my web browser, and it looks just like, any other web page would look if it doesn't have anything on it, right? So let's actually start putting some stuff in my web page. I'm going to right click and go to open with, because I want to open up this I want to open this web page not in my web browser, but in a text editor where I can actually make some changes to this document and actually put some stuff on my web page. So I'm going to open with, and I said earlier you can use uh, you know text editors like Notepad to create your web pages. That's fine, but it's not the best way to do it. What you want to do is you want to use an editor that will highlight certain elements for you and help you find errors in your code and stuff like that. So we're going to use a program called Code Writer. Code Writer is a very basic, very stripped down IDE, or integrated development environment, for writing code. And it works perfectly well for web pages. It is free, so if you don't have CodeWriter on your computer, you can find it in the Microsoft Store. Just go down to the Cortana search bar and type CodeWriter down here, and you'll be able to find it. Again, it's free, so this is why we're going to use CodeWriter, because it's probably the best that we can find that's light and free and gives us the features we want. So I'm going to open up CodeWriter, and it's going to give me my editor menu, or my editor screen, right? And CodeWriter is really fantastic. This will kind of change your life. If you've ever written a web page or a program in text, um, CodeWriter is definitely the way to go. So let's talk about some of the things here. Up here, I have my save menu. I can save my files. That's really helpful. Really important to know. Down here I can create new files, and there are a ton of different languages I can create new files in, but I already have the file I want, so I'm not worried there. I can open files here, do all kinds of stuff, but I'm just going to start writing actual code for this website. All right, now every website, the first thing that needs to be on the top of the website is a statement that indicates to the browser what language you are writing this website in, right? So we're going to use a language called HTML5. It's the most recent version of HTML, and it's the most feature-rich version of HTML. It has tons of features that allow us to do cool stuff, and we're going to do those later on. But right now, we want to focus on HTML5, and I want to tell my web browser that we're writing HTML5. And the way I do that is by creating a doc type statement. So the way I do that is I would type this, less than symbol. This is a caret, and the less than symbol, exclamation point, and then in capitals, doc type, just like that. And the doc type is HTML. Now, this has to be typed exactly like this, right? You want to make sure you get everything in there, the less than symbol, exclamation point, doc type in all caps, and then HTML in lowercase, and then the greater than symbol at the end, right? This is our doc type element, and this is going to indicate to the browser, hey, we're writing HTML code, so read this as HTML. All right. Under that, I want to indicate my HTML section, so HTML. Now notice when I typed that, it automatically popped in this stuff right here. You might be thinking, well, why did it copy you? Well, it kind of didn't, because there are differences. There is a stark difference. For one, this is my open tag, right? And I know it's my open tag because it's, it's wrapped with these carets here. The name on the inside is an element that I understand, HTML, but there's no forward slash. This is my end element or my closing tag, and this closing tag is indicated by a forward slash, right? Now, everything in between the open tag and the close tag is going to be considered HTML code, right? So I want to put everything in my web page in between these two things. I closed out that page on W3 Schools. But if you remember that diagram I showed you earlier, everything was wrapped inside the HTML, right? So I'm going to hit enter a couple times to give myself some room to add new content. So if you remember, there were two things that we had inside of our HTML. We had a head and a body. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in right now. And the way I do that is I want to hit tab. And the reason I tab is because everything inside the HTML, I want to give it an indentation so that I know it's inside the HTML. That just helps it be easier to read. Technically, I could do everything on the left margin, but I definitely don't want to do that. It'll get really hard later on to see what elements are inside of which elements. It's just much easier to get in the habit of tabbing in whenever you're inside of another element. So I'm tabbing in, and I'm going to write head. And again, CodeWriter was helpful and gave us our end tags so that we don't forget. You must always include end tags on elements that require them. Some elements don't, but the elements that do require them, you always want to include your head tag. All right, so that's my head. And inside my head, I can have an element called a title. And we'll explain what that is in a minute. All right, so that's my head element. The other thing I can have inside of my HTML is a body element. Now the body element is going to be everything that's displayed on my web page. So everything in between these two tags, this open and close, body, open and close, everything in there is going to be what's going on my web page. For example, let's do an H1 really quick. This is my web page. All right, I'm going to go ahead, actually I'm going to give myself a title. Okay, and what the title element does inside the head, the title element will basically change the text that goes on my tab in my web browser so that I can know what that tab is supposed to include. Now, the difference between the head and the body is, as I said, the body displays or is all the elements that are going to be displayed on my page. The head is all the stuff that's kind of in the background, right? Things like meta tags. So if I'm using a search engine to find the website, I put meta tags in the head with keywords that should be relevant to my web page. So if someone types in the keyword, it'll be linked to my web page and they'll be able to find my page faster. And other things like that. The title here is an exception to the rule where none of this will be displayed. The title will actually change the text in my tab, so that actually kind of breaks that rule. But we always want a title on our web page, because if we don't, it's just going to be the file name. Like if we look here, the title is index.html, and that's boring. We want to actually tell it what this tab is. So I'm going to go back to CodeWriter. I'm going to go back to CodeWriter, and I'm going to save my work. So I'm going to save that there. And then when I go back to my web browser, this is my file. I can actually just refresh, and it will make my changes for me. So notice my title changed, and here it says this is my web page, right? And this is my web page. That's the H1 element that I put on my web page, right? And I could do all kinds of stuff. I can add other elements like a paragraph element. And I can Control S to save my document, go back to my web browser and hit F5 to refresh. And then I have my header and my heading and my paragraph, right? Let's talk about headings and paragraphs real quick. So H1 stands for heading 1, but there can be other H's. H2, we can do H3, and so on and so forth, all the way down to H6. Oh, let's do an H6. Now, headings, what they do is they allow us to kind of separate our website into different sections. So I'm going to save this real quick and go back to my web page. So this allows us to separate our website in sections. This H1 is the biggest one, and then, second biggest and third biggest, all the way down to teeny tiny H6 that's even smaller than our paragraph element. So there are different levels of your header. And usually the way it works is your H1 is the most important thing on your web page. It's at the very top and it says, this is what the web page is. And then below that, you have subheadings. Indicated by H2s. And then anything inside of an H2 that needs another heading would be an H3, and so on and so forth. It's basically just a way to structure and organize your web page. Now, this isn't as important these days as it used to be. It used to be when the web was all text and there wasn't a lot of images or anything like that. When every web page looked kind of like this. This was really important, and people would get mad if you messed up the organizational structure of a web page with your headings. But now everything's, flashy graphics and pictures and stuff like that. So you won't even really use headings as much anymore. But it's important that you know how to do them. All right. So those are my headings, my paragraphs, and whatnot. Now so far we've built an actual website. And this is fantastic. I love what we have so far here. It is a bit boring. We could jazz it up, make it more colorful and whatnot. But I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I just want you to understand the concepts here. First of all, number one, you need to have a doc type. Number two, everything that is HTML needs to be inside of an HTML element, right? An open tag and a close tag. Everything inside the HTML element is going to be HTML code, right? And so there are two sections in the HTML element we need to be concerned with. The head, which contains all the items that are going to be kind of backstage stuff that your user doesn't need to see. And then we have the body, which is where we put all the content that's going to be displayed on our web page. So if you understand those concepts, then you will easily be able to complete the next couple of assignments. And for the next assignment, I'm actually going to walk you through it step by step. I will build that web page with you so that you can, we're all beginners here. And so it's helpful to watch someone do something and just kind of go along with them. Not all assignments are going to be like that. Matter of fact, the first assignment's going to be that way. From then on, the assignments are going to be a basic instructional video like this, where I show you the concepts, and then I give you I tell you what I want you to do, and you have to go out and solve that problem and do it on your own. But I will see you in the next video. I'm excited for this journey you're about to start. You're learning a skill that is really, really fun. In my opinion, I love creating websites. I do it for fun all the time at home. Just, just to see what I can build. If you're a creative person, this is a huge, huge skill set that's going to give you a new fun hobby or possibly a career. You can make a lot of money as a web developer. All right, so I'm going to stop rambling and let you get to learning. Go to W3 Schools, check out their stuff there, start learning. There are other resources you can use to learn. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to shut up and let you get started. I will see you in the next video. Thanks.